there's a prison with no walls, no bars, no guards standing at the door. You can walk out of it any second you choose, and yet almost nobody does. This prison is built entirely out of other people's opinions of you. And the strange part is you built it yourself, one small compromise at a time. Today we are going to talk about something so ordinary that most people never even notice it is happening. The quiet, constant, exhausting habit of shaping your life around what other people might think. By the end of this video, you may start noticing it everywhere. In the way you talk, in the way you dress, in the career you chose, in the opinions you never said out loud. Here's the paradox. The more you try to be liked by everyone, the less you actually feel free, and the less people genuinely respect you. It sounds backwards. We are taught from childhood that being agreeable, likable, and approved of is the path to a good life. Good grades came with approval. Good behavior came with praise. Every stage of growing up rewarded us for fitting the shape someone else wanted. So we learn a lesson early, often without ever putting it into words. Our worth depends on what others think of us. And once that belief settles into the mind, something strange happens. We stop living our own life and start managing an image of ourselves in the minds of others. The philosopher Lao Tzu captured this over 2,000 years ago in a single sentence. Care about what other people think and you will always be their prisoner. Notice he did not say ask for other people's opinions and you will be influenced by them. He said care about what they think and you will always be their prisoner. Always, not sometimes, not occasionally. Always, that is the paradox. Seeking approval feels like the safe path, yet it is actually the path that removes your freedom most completely. For most of human history, being rejected by your group was not just uncomfortable, it was dangerous. Tens of thousands of years ago, a person cast out of their tribe faced predators, starvation, and exposure, largely alone. The brain that survived was the brain that cared deeply about belonging. Fear of social rejection is not a modern weakness. It is an ancient survival mechanism wired into the same part of the brain that processes physical pain. Modern neuroscience actually supports this. Brain imaging studies show that social rejection activates some of the same brain regions as physical pain, particularly the areas tied to distress rather than the sensation of pain itself. The two experiences are not identical, but the overlap is real. The brain treats social exclusion as something urgent, worth flagging, worth reacting to. So when you feel that small flinch of anxiety before posting something online, or before disagreeing with a friend, or before choosing a path your family does not approve of, you are not weak. You are running very old software in a very new world. The problem is not that this instinct exists. The problem is that in the modern world, it rarely turns off. In a small tribe, you knew exactly who your group was. Today, thanks to social media and constant connectivity, everyone is potentially watching. The audience has become infinite, and the ancient alarm system never gets to rest. That is why this feeling is so persistent. It is not a flaw in your character. It is a survival mechanism operating in an environment it was never designed for. Before we look at history, notice how this plays out in your own week. Someone rewrites a simple email 6 times, not because the message is unclear, but because they are worried it might sound too direct. Someone sits in a meeting with a good idea and says nothing because disagreeing with the room feels riskier than staying quiet. Someone writes a song or a poem or the first page of a story and never shows another living soul because the imagined judgment of a stranger already feels louder than the joy of making it. None of these moments feel dramatic. That is exactly why they are so effective. The prison Lao Tzu described is rarely built from one big collapse. It is built from 1,000 small retreats like these, each one small enough to seem harmless in the moment. Now let us look at someone who understood this trap on a much larger scale and chose to walk out of it anyway. In ancient Greece there lived a philosopher named Diogenes of Sinope. He belonged to a school of thought called Cynicism, which valued living according to nature and truth rather than social convention. Diogenes famously lived with almost nothing. He owned barely more than a cloak and a wooden bowl, until the day he saw a child drinking water with cupped hands and threw the bowl away too, deciding even that was unnecessary. He walked through Athens in broad daylight, carrying a lamp, telling anyone who asked that he was searching for an honest man. He mocked the wealthy, ridiculed empty social customs, and famously told Alexander the Great, arguably the most powerful man alive at the time, to simply step aside because he was blocking the sunlight. People called him mad. They called him a beggar. Some historical accounts say children in the street would mock him, and he would laugh along with them rather than feel shame. But here is the striking part. Centuries after his death, Diogenes is remembered not as the man who was laughed at, but as one of the most fearlessly independent minds in the history of philosophy. The very people who mocked him for ignoring their opinions are long forgotten. His name is not. This is not a suggestion to abandon possessions or reject society entirely. It is a demonstration of a deeper truth. A person who stops needing approval becomes, paradoxically, someone people remember and often respect far more than someone who chased it their entire life. 2,000 years later, his lifestyle matters far less than the question he forces us to ask. How much of our own life is spent trying not to be judged? So what exactly is happening underneath all of this? Psychologists describe something called the locus of control. Some people operate from an internal locus of control, meaning they believe their choices, values, and self-worth come from within themselves. Others operate from an external locus of control, meaning their sense of worth depends on outside validation, approval, applause, agreement, likes, praise. The tragedy of an external locus of control is that it can never be fully satisfied. There is always one more person who disapproves, one more critical comment, one more raised eyebrow. You can win the approval of 1,000 people and still feel unworthy because of the one who did not clap. Another philosopher noticed something unsettling about the simple act of being watched. He observed that the moment we become aware of another person's gaze, something in us shifts. We stop feeling like the one doing the looking and start feeling like the thing being looked at. That philosopher was Jean-Paul Sartre, and he called this idea the look. He argued that the instant we sense we are being observed, we begin to experience ourselves as an object in someone else's eyes, rather than as a free subject living our own life. In simple terms, the awareness of being watched can quietly turn us into a performance instead of a person. This is the deeper mechanism behind Lao Tzu's warning. When you care too much about what others think, you stop being the author of your life and become an actor performing for an audience that never stops changing its expectations. The moment you satisfy one version of what people want, the audience shifts and a new performance is demanded. That is the prison, not a place, a pattern. A never-ending performance for a crowd that changes its standards the moment you meet them. This is not just philosophy for the sake of philosophy. This shapes real decisions in ordinary daily life. Think about how many people stay in careers they quietly dislike because changing paths would invite questions from family. Think about how many creative ideas are never shared because of the fear of criticism before a single word is written. Think about how many honest conversations never happen because keeping the peace felt safer than telling the truth. Picture someone who has wanted to leave a stable but unfulfilling job for years. Each time they get close to deciding, the same imagined scene plays in their head. Relatives asking why. Old colleagues quietly judging the decision. Nothing has actually happened yet. No one has said a word, and still that imagined disapproval is enough to keep them exactly where they are, sometimes for a decade or more. This is what makes approval seeking so costly. It rarely needs real criticism to work. The mere possibility of it is often enough to make the decision for you. The cost of approval seeking is rarely obvious in the moment. It shows up later as regret, as the quiet ache of realizing that years were spent optimizing for other people's comfort, rather than living according to your own. Here is a practical way to begin loosening this grip. Start distinguishing between two very different things: feedback and approval. Feedback is information that can help you grow, coming from people whose judgment you genuinely trust and respect. Approval is simply agreement, and it says almost nothing about whether your choice was wise or foolish. A room full of people nodding does not make a decision correct. A room full of people frowning does not make it wrong either. Try this the next time a decision feels heavier than it should. Write down what you are actually afraid will happen if people disapprove, not the vague feeling, the specific outcome. In most cases, when the fear is put into plain words, it turns out to be smaller and less certain than it felt in your head. Most imagined disapproval never even arrives, and when it does, it rarely costs what we feared it would. Ask yourself a simple question the next time you feel that familiar tightening before making a choice. Am I doing this because I believe it is right or because I am afraid of how it will look? That single question, asked honestly and repeatedly, can slowly begin to dissolve the invisible prison Lao Tzu described. Here's the reframe I want to leave you with. Freedom is not the absence of other people's opinions. Opinions will always exist. Someone will always disagree, judge, misunderstand, or disapprove, no matter how carefully you live. Freedom is the moment those opinions stop being the thing that decides what you do next. Lao Tzu was not telling us to stop caring about people. He was telling us to stop handing them the keys to our own mind. There is a profound difference between kindness toward others and dependence on their approval. One comes from strength. The other comes from fear wearing the mask of politeness. The most quietly powerful thing you can do in a world addicted to validation is simply live according to what you know to be true, whether or not anyone claps. Because the moment you stop performing for the crowd, You finally get to meet the person who was standing behind the performance the entire time.